The sun was just beginning to rise over the rolling hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of dew grass and the soft rustling of leaves. An old wooden house stood on a small hill, its weathered walls whispering stories of the past. On the porch, an elderly woman named Martha wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders and stepped outside, expecting to see the familiar sight that greeted her every morning. Her favorite horse, Rusty. But today was different. There, in front of her house, Rusty lay on the ground, his massive brown body still, his breathing shallow. Martha's heart lurched. She had seen many things in her long life, but nothing could prepare her for this. Rusty! Her voice trembling. She hurried down the porch steps, her frail legs moving faster than years. She knelt beside him, running her wrinkled hands through his coarse. Rusty let out a weak sigh, his eyes flickering open. They were still full of love, of recognition, but they lacked their usual spark. Martha swallowed the lump in her throat as memories came rushing back. Rusty had been a part of her life for more than 20 years. He had been just a young colt when her late husband Thomas had brought him home. She remembered the way Thomas had chuckled, watching the little foal stumble around the barn, trying to find his footing. "This one's special, Martha," he had said. "He's got a brave heart." And Thomas had been right. Rusty had grown into a strong, dependable horse. He had carried Martha through the vast fields when she went to gather herbs. He had pulled the cart full of supplies when Thomas was still alive, never once slowing down, no matter how heavy the load. He had waited patiently by the gate every morning, his ears pricked forward, knowing Martha would come with a treat and a gentle pat. But more than that, Rusty had been her companion in loneliness. After Thomas had passed, the house had felt unbearably empty. The long, quiet days had stretched before her, each one feeling heavier than the last. But Rusty had been there. He had nudged her hand when she sat alone on the porch. He had whinnied softly whenever she whispered Thomas's name. He had never left her side, even when he, too, had grown old. And now it seemed his journey was coming to an end. Tears slipped down Martha's wrinkled cheeks as she stroked his forehead. "You've been so good to me, Rusty," she whispered. "You've given me more love and comfort than I ever deserved." Rusty let out a slow, tired breath, his eyelids fluttering. His body was worn, his legs weak. He had spent his life being strong, for Thomas, for Martha, but now he was tired. Martha looked up at the sky. The wind whispered through the trees, the golden sunlight warming the earth. She closed her eyes, remembering something Thomas had once told her. "Horses don't leave us, Martha. They just run ahead, waiting for us to catch up." A sad smile tugged at her lips. She looked down at Rusty, at the friend who had carried her through so many years, and nodded. "It's okay, my dear," she murmured. "You can run ahead now." As if hearing her, Rusty took one last deep breath. His body relaxed, his eyes slowly closed, and a peaceful stillness settled over him. Martha sat there for a long time, cradling his head in her lap, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. But as the wind whispered through the fields, she thought she heard something, a soft, distant sound, like the thunder of hooves against the earth. She looked up, and for a brief moment, she imagined Rusty galloping across the sky, his mane flowing in the wind, free at last. A tear rolled down her cheek, but this time it wasn't just from sorrow. It was gratitude. That evening, as the stars twinkled above, Martha sat on her porch, staring out at the fields where Rusty had once roamed. She whispered into the night, her voice carrying in the breeze. "Run free, my friend. I'll see you again." And in the rustling of the leaves, in the soft echo of the wind, she could almost hear his reply.